Unafraid Show. It's your boy George Reister in the building. Thank you guys for joining me. All you people who are up late for the Pac-12 after dark games. We got the recap of college football today. The top 10, which will be out on Unafraid Show as soon as I get off, but I will announce it on here. And that Oregon Stanford game. Jeez Louise, bro. Like, that was literally one of the most heartbreaking losses that I had ever seen. I mean, that was one of the most heartbreaking losses that I've seen. And I have been a part of a couple, so I'm going to break down the worst losses that I've ever been a part of. I mean, this Stanford-Oregon game was absolutely atrocious. But thank you guys for joining me. Send in your comments. I'll be looking at them on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, all those as well. But I want to start with the highlights of today. First of all, like, how bad is Florida State? How bad is Florida State? Being that Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion. Virginia Tech, like, opened up a can of whoop ass on Florida State. But then Virginia Tech came back and lost to Old Dominion. Old Dominion is ranked like 127 out of the 130 FBS programs. And they lost. So how bad does that make them? I know I'm picking on Florida State right now, but facts are facts. That's one of the first things that came to my mind. How good are these young quarterbacks that are coming out in college football right now? I mean, it is crazy impressive what you're seeing from guys like Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. You got Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, and these are teams that are national championship contenders simply because their freshman quarterbacks or their sophomore quarterbacks are this good. It's pretty incredible. Like, when you think about how much the high school whole system is helping these kids. Like, just the way that they do it, just the way that all these kids train, it is pretty impressive. It is pretty impressive. I want to go into the top 10 for today. The top 10 teams in the college football, in the Unafraid Show power rankings. Remember, the Unafraid Show power rankings are based upon quality wins, your schedule, and your dominance. That's how you get ranked high in the Unafraid Show top 10. And the top 10 teams, if I can pull them up real quick, I'm rainbow wheeling. If I can pull them up, the number one team in the country right now is Alabama. Alabama is the number one team in the country at this point in time. They have just dominated everybody who's been in front of them. It doesn't matter whether it's it wasn't their fault that Louisville wasn't good, because maybe if it's quarterback, if he doesn't leave, maybe they are more competitive. But Alabama has just been absolutely dominating everybody, and you have to give them credit for that. As much as I'm a person who has tried to diminish Alabama over the years, there's nothing to say. There's nothing to say right now except for these dudes are good. And now that they have Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback, I've said it and I will continue to say it. This team at this point in time looks unbeatable. They look unbeatable. And I don't know what anybody can do to stop this team at this point in time, especially with how well Tua Tagovailoa is playing. I mean, this was the fourth game of the season, and he just had his first incompletion on third down, which is absolutely incredible. Now I want to go. So the top 10. So we got Alabama at 1. I know a lot of people are going to be surprised at the team that I have at number 2, but remember, the Unafraid Show rankings, we do not care about like where you were last week has no bearing on where you are the next week. And the AP polls, you guys do not believe these AP polls. They are absolute crap. They are garbage. And I got a prime example for you. Last week, the AP poll had BYU ranked number 25. But in front of, I'm sorry, they had BYU ranked number 25. They had Wisconsin ranked number 18 and Cal at number 30. Now, how does that work? BYU beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin hadn't played anybody to that point in time. So we really don't know how good Wisconsin is. BYU beat them, but then Cal beat BYU. So how on earth is BYU ranked ahead of Cal, first of all? And how is Wisconsin ranked above BYU and Cal? This is what I'm talking about. This is the name brand bias that goes into the college football rankings, and it should not be the case. So in the Unafraid Show rankings, we do not do that under any circumstances. We play fair. You get what you earn. So Alabama won at 4-0. You got Notre Dame sitting at the 2 spot. Know a lot of people are surprised that Notre Dame is sitting at the 2 spot, but the reality is Notre Dame has been balling. Notre Dame and their coach, he must have listened to or read the Unafraid Show power rankings for the top 10 last week, because I said it there in any way, shape, form, or fashion. A championship contender with him at quarterback. Because he can't throw the ball. Like, you cannot be a championship contender if you cannot pass the football, and they cannot pass the football with Brandon Wimbush. So, what did Brian Kelly do? He did something genius. He put in Ian Book, and Ian Book can ball. Ian Book is a good player. Ian Book is good. So, LSU at number 3. Why is LSU at number? And Auburn beat Washington. So you see what I'm saying? You get where I'm going right here. So that's why LSU is number 3. I got Stanford at 4. I almost threw up at the end of this game, and I'm going to go over the Stanford-Oregon game in just a minute, but I almost threw up at the end of this game. But the bottom line is that despite having a tough game against Oregon, and despite all the, like how they were not dominant at all in the game, you have to applaud them for getting it done when it counted the most. They found a way to win, and as much as it hurts me to say, Stanford was the better team tonight because they got the win. The better team always wins on that day. I mean, that's just the truth. That I believe that principle. I live by it. So as much as it hurts to say, after I watched Oregon dominate the entire game, except for 2 horrendous plays, then yeah. So Stanford is sitting at the 4 spot. Oklahoma at number 5. Oklahoma struggled and had to go to overtime to beat Army. But how you going to knock somebody when they're playing a triple option team? Anytime you play these service academies, like, you are up against it. There is no easy win against these service academies. It is tough to deal with. They're real competition yet, besides the Texas A&M game. And after Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion today, it does not look like they're going to be like they're going to have any opposition winning the ACC right now. It doesn't look very tough at all. Got Ohio State at 7. Yes, Ohio State looks good. And I definitely believe that they have at least as many athletes as Alabama is. That Alabama does. They are one of the only teams that can match Alabama athlete for athlete. So you have to give them props there. But the reality, though, is that as soon as they play somebody, then they will be able to move up. And that TCU win doesn't look so hot after TCU just got absolutely demolished by Texas this week. They got demolished by Texas. So I'm not really putting a whole lot of stock in that TCU win right now. Even though it looked good, it just doesn't feel quite as good right now. I got Georgia at 8. The AP poll and coaches poll has them at number 2. But the reality is Georgia's potential is a national championship. But Georgia's schedule is like a bottom tier Power 5 team. That's what they have. They don't have a good schedule. They have not played anybody. The best teams that they've played so far are South Carolina and Missouri. And neither team has a meaningful win. So if there are no meaningful wins on your schedule, you cannot be ranked high. I get that you have all the talent and all the potential in the world. That's why Penn State has not made the top 10 yet, despite being 4-0. Until you play somebody, you're not getting in the Power 5. I'm sorry, in the Unafraid Show college football top 10 power rankings. Washington is at number 9. They knocked off Arizona State, who beat Michigan State, who people think very highly of. That looks like a solid win. And the Washington versus Stanford game in a couple weeks, that is going to be a heavyweight title fight. I predict Stanford to win that, and I said Stanford was going to win the conference, and I got to stick by that. West Virginia at number 10. They are 3-0. I'll get to my prediction on the BCS Bowls. West Virginia at 3-0. Will Grier, another strong week. I mean, like, they had a week off, and he only got stronger. Threw up for 356 yards, 5 touchdowns. And the schedule is going to provide them a lot of opportunities in the Big 12 to move up the rankings. And next up teams who got a shot to get in. Penn State, Texas, Michigan, and Oregon all have chances to get in the top 10. I like all of those teams on some level. The teams that I think that are actually going to make the playoffs, Alabama, because, I mean, how can you possibly say that they shouldn't? I'm going to cancel Georgia because if Georgia loses one game this year, they do not deserve to be in the playoffs. It's the same way that if Washington had lost last year, there's no way that they should have been in the college football. Well, 2 years ago, no way they should have been in the college football playoff. But they did not. So that's where you go. That's what you got. So it'll be Alabama. I think Stanford's got a real shot to make it. If they run the table undefeated, they're going to make the college football playoff. I think Oklahoma's going to come out of the Big 12 and Ohio at making the playoffs. You have to give them credit for that. No, Washington will not cruise because they have a tough schedule. They got Stanford. They still got Oregon. This is not it. Now I want to go to the heartbreaking game of the day. Jeez Louise. That Oregon and Stanford game. I mean, I don't like Oregon found a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Found a way to snatch defeat. I mean, going up 31-7 and then you get it called back. No problem. You're on the 1 yard line. Fumble 6. And then you come back and you take the lead. Stanford's a really, really good team. Couple plays here and there just cost the game. And then that fumble by C.J. Verdale at the end of the game, good God. It reminded me of the DeAnthony Thomas fumbles in when Oregon played against LSU. That was a career-defining moment for DeAnthony Thomas. He got better after that. That was a heartbreaker for him that only propelled him to get better. And I like the kid, Verdale. I hope the coaches big him up and all that because he played well. And if any of these teams stumble in the Pac-12 North, like if Washington is to beat Stanford and then Oregon goes and beats Washington, they're right back in it. So it's not over. It's not over for any of these teams by any standpoint. But that was an all-time great game, though. That was an all-time great game. I want to go over the worst losses that I have been a part of because college football is the only sport that can simultaneously make you feel alive and make you feel like you want to die at the same time. I was watching the Oregon game at home all by myself like I like to watch games. I don't like to be at bars. I don't like to be at clubs. No, don't want to be nowhere near any of that. I want to be in the comfort of my own home watching. And that's where I was. I was so happy. I was excited. And then all of a sudden, even when the wheels fell off, I was like, okay, Oregon's still ahead. No problem. But a Fiesta Bowl. We should have been in the national championship. But we ended up playing it in the Fiesta Bowl. And we lost to Stanford. I think we were up 14 points into the fourth quarter. I think we got 2 punts blocked or something insane. And we lost the game. Only loss of the season was the stinking ass Stanford. And then the TCU bowl game was pretty bad when Oregon was up by like 30 points and lost to TCU. And then that Zach Ertz back at the end, that they are back and that they are a force to be dealt with again. They're physical, they're fast, they're strong. And if Coach Cristobal is good as people say he is, which we will see, these are the games. The game after these games are the games where you show whether you are a good coach or not. Because after these games is when you find out, because there are teams that get beat twice. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you lose a game, a tough emotional game to Stanford, and then you come back the next week and lose, then you let Stanford beat you twice. Especially if it's a team who is inferior. So you can't let Stanford beat you twice. And if Cristobal is as good as he's showing himself to be so far, with the way the team is playing, then he will have an opportunity to, then he will make sure that Oregon doesn't get beat twice by Stanford. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Herbert was as good as advertised. Justin Herbert was as good as advertised, and it was pretty impressive. Like, you can't deny how good the kid is. There's not a quarterback in the nation that's better than Justin Herbert right now. Not Tua Tagovailoa, not Will Grier, not any of them. Not the kid Locke from Missouri. There is no quarterback. There's no team that wouldn't trade their quarterback for Justin Herbert right now. Maybe Nick Saban might be wanting to keep him just because he's a little bit faster runner. Tua is a faster runner, but I don't think so, man. There's no value that you can place on a dude who can sling the rock like that. Very, very impressive. Very, very impressive by Justin Herbert today. And I think that the Ducks are back. I think that they are a little bit away. I didn't expect them to be national championship contenders this year, but I knew that they would, I hoped that they would make a statement. They made a statement today, and then they need to go the next couple weeks, continue to build off of this, get some wins,